Hello everyone, and thank you for joining Creating the Ultimate Tech Brain. Visualize and integrate everything for smarter IT management and development. My name is Matt Caton, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We have a topic-specific webinar today, specifically on IT management and visualizing all the data, the different types of data and sources that the data originates from, and visualizing all of that inside a single application, which is TheBrain. Now, the reason for today's webinar is specifically because we all face a knowledge crisis. It's an information overload. We're receiving information in files, documents from the web, from social media, even standing around the water cooler. We can gather valuable information that we need to capture in order to do our job.
So I have the knowledge crisis divided up into four main categories. And the first and foremost is actually ownership of data, particularly in a larger environment. The larger the environment gets, the more individuals we have, the more often we see that information is being lost, duplicated. And it's not just the storage of that information, but it's the retention of that information as well. When people move on to other departments or outside of the field they're currently working on and an expert of, where does that information go? Does it go with them in their head? Is it stored in a file and folder directory somewhere that no one can ever access or find anymore? So who actually owns that information, and how can it be communicated with other users? And of course, that ties right into information being isolated by people using different applications, different ways of storing their data. Information becomes lost or simply unshared knowledge. A person becomes the knowledge expert of a particular field, but they have no way of sharing that information, that data. And the information, as I've mentioned, is dispersed. There's so many different file types. There's so many different ways of storing information. Google Docs, Google Drive, OneNote, Evernote. Everyone has their own particular application that they might like and how they store their data. But is it compatible across your landscape, across the scene in your environment? Can everyone find and access all of that information? And of course, that finally brings us down to the changing landscapes that we're faced with, the evolution of your technology, of your data. Is it keeping up with the time as new environments are introduced, new types of social networking, of communicating within the office, new types of applications? Can you handle them? Can you share them? Can you accept that data, receive that information, and adapt your environment to today's fast-paced lifestyle and technology schedule that we're all on? And of course, what I'm referring to is moving beyond a linear file system. Linear file system, obviously here on the right, I've got just a screenshot of a file and folder type system. We're all familiar with it. It's a digital filing cabinet. And Documentum, Dropbox, Google Drive, whether you're on a Mac or a Windows machine, it's all the same. It's a digital filing cabinet. It's very, very linear. And the difficult component here is if I create a folder, and you can see over on the right, just for instance, I've got a folder that I see called VoIP Research. There's information in that VoIP research that is important to me. Maybe I'm putting together an entirely new CRM system and I want to integrate VoIP into our ticketing system, et cetera. So there's important data in there. And I might be in a folder elsewhere looking at telnet applications or other CRM systems, or the databases that my CRM system is going to be installed on. And I need to know if it's compatible with VoIP. So let's grab that VoIP research. Where is it? It's somewhere completely elsewhere other than the CRM research folder. The two are not connected. They may be on different drives or different folders on my system. And once again, as soon as I think of some related piece of information, I'm off on a treasure hunt to find that information in my network. So let's talk about how to overcome all of this, the key steps to visualizing all of our data. And the first and foremost component is to simplify, obviously. And there's so many vast different ways to simplify your information, whether it's a single point of access. So it doesn't matter whether you're trying to open up a SharePoint document, a document that's being stored in Outlook 360 or Outlook or Office 365 or Google Drive or where that information is. There's only one application that you're going to retrieve that data that you received. And of course, eliminating duplication as well. Once again, we've referred to that a few different times. If I've got a folder on a specific topic, rather than grabbing related information and putting copies of that document there, just simply ease of navigation. If I've got related data, how can I get to that related data very, very easily? And of course, indexing all of this information as well. Sometimes I don't know specifically what I'm looking for, or I've got a clue, but I don't know the full name of the document itself, or who wrote the document, or when that document was created or produced. So therefore, I need to be able to do a search to find that. And also, not just the data itself, but this is very, very important to us at TheBrain, the relationships between the data. Understanding why two pieces of information are connected to one another, whether it's a person and a project or two separate projects, being able to visualize and understand why and how they're connected is very, very important. And just the fact that they are connected, being able to visualize that, as you'll see when we start creating a brain, is a key component, a key piece of context in understanding our data and making, therefore, better decisions as we move forward. And people are also very, very important. And people so often get lost or overlooked the people connection in our data structures. Who worked on a document? Who's responsible for restarting that server? Who owns the information that we're looking for if we don't have access to a particular process or to reboot a server on our network? Who does? And without actually having to open up a document and read through that, or you get to a server, you're blocked, and you start asking from cubicle to cubicle, do you have access? Do you have access? Finding out who has the access to the information that you need and recording that data, visualizing it in the brain is something that we'll be getting to as well. And finally, of course, keeping it all dynamic. Addressing that final stage in the knowledge crisis of the ever-changing landscapes. Can you evolve? Can you access your information, whether you're sitting down at a computer or you're on the road and you're just simply on your iPhone or logging in from a colleague's machine? And can that colleague log in and access that information if they needed it as well? So keeping it fluid and dynamic as time goes on. So hopefully we've answered the question of why it's important to visualize your information. We'll be sharing some, or I'll be sharing some samples with you now. But first and foremost, in a nutshell, just to summarize, you can't manage what you can't see. If you're not understanding the bigger picture of your information, how can you make better, more improved decisions when it comes time to evolve or move on to the next step? And of course, better understanding leads to fewer mistakes, quicker success with the projects you're working on. And I love this little final summary that I have. More knowledge leads to better planning, better decisions, better business decisions lead to increases in savings and sales across the board. That's sort of a no-brainer right there. And that leads us into the process of starting to visualize and in IT, we all know it as the network map. So that's where we're going to start today, mapping out your network, your landscape. And there's a reason why they call it a network map, not a network list, not a network document or a network chart. It's a map because there are many-to-many relationships within an environment, within your business environment, as we'll see in my different brain examples. But I use sort of as an example, this is the London Underground map. And I use this as a great example of the many-to-many relationships that we're faced with even in an IT environment. Here, obviously, if we fly into Heathrow and we need to get somewhere else in London, let's say to King's Cross Station, there are many different ways to get there. So we've got Heathrow in the little corner over here, King's Cross, I can't remember, it's up here in the upper right somewhere. And of course, we can go the southern route past Victoria and Westchester, et cetera. We can go up and over Paddington Station, take the northern route and catch some scenery along the way, or make a few stops that we like, or cut right through the middle. It doesn't matter the fact that we're going from point A to point Z. We've got many different options depending on what we want to do, how we want to get there, why we want to get there, other stops along the way that are important to us. And that same metaphor holds true in a business environment. There's many different ways that either people on a team or just me myself am thinking about information. And regardless of how I'm thinking about that data, am I going to be able to find what I'm looking for? So let's jump right into our first brain example. And this is my network map brain. Now, this particular brain that I'm about to open is actually a demo brain that you can download and install. The next 3 brains that I'm going to open up today are all sample brains, and we will send you a link by being on our call today. We'll be sending you a link to access to download and install all of these different brains. You can use them as a seed for growing your own brain, edit the content, and reconnect it in a way that maps out your business profile, or in this case, your network map, or just simply use it as a sandbox. Play around, click around, get used to the idea of creating thoughts, deleting thoughts, seeing how content can be interconnected, and then start from scratch with a new brain all on your own. So in this network map that, again, you can import into a brain on your local system, we basically have 4 different departments down below, or 4 different areas, entry points into our network map. I can go directly into reviewing applications. I can actually pull up the database and find out what apps are running on those databases. Or maybe I'm just specifically looking for all servers that are running out of our Los Angeles office, or all applications that are being utilized by a specific user community. Again, many-to-many relationships. It doesn't matter how I want to get there. I can still find what I'm looking for. So here I've clicked on servers by location, and I go into Los Angeles, and I can clearly see I've got 8 different servers running in my Los Angeles office. I'll click on one. It's my apps01 server. I've got ACT, and the RemedyDB database is running there, which obviously supports the Remedy application. So the Remedy application, I've got all of the spec sheets down below, information. I can have notes about how to log in, how to reboot, et cetera. We'll be using some of those examples today. But specifically, I can see that the Remedy application is being used by the IT Support Center community. So if for any reason this Remedy DB1 or the server that it's running on Apps01 goes down, let's say I'm in Los Angeles today. I know that Los Angeles is prone to the periodical earthquake from time to time. If we lose power at our Los Angeles office, the servers are going to be down for some time. Who is that going to affect in my business? I've got an international company that I'm keeping track of, and I need to know who this Los Angeles power outage, it's only temporary, but who's it going to affect? I don't want to scare the entire company and send out a massive email just to the specific people I want to notify that are going to be affected by this issue. Let's not trouble anyone else since it's not really top urgent. So I'm going to go through and review server by server and find out who is going to be affected. So we've already seen that the Remedy app will be going down because that's hosted on a server in LA. I better contact the IT Support Center. Of course, I can click on this thought, look up their phone number and data and information over on the right. And let's just click on another server. I'll just grab this Web Apps 1. Web Trends is going to be going down And it looks like our sales reps, all of our sales team really relies on web trends up and running so they can look at the latest reports and share that information with distributors and customers, et cetera. So that's going to affect their performance today. I better let them know temporary outage and keep them up to date. And I can meticulously go through and find out which apps are obviously going down, which servers are going down, and keep people well informed. So that's one example of how you can utilize this network map. And before I start creating some new data in another brain and sharing this information with you, I also want to let you know that within the brain, by default, all day today, when I open up a new brain, it's going to be in what we call the normal view. But I can very easily, let's go back into, I'll just grab this SQL and the mail res database. And I'm going to move the notes a little bit over to the side here, and I'm going to switch into another view. I'm going to go into what we call the mind map view. And mind map view, let's go ahead and minimize just a bit. And maybe I'll just go all the way back up to applications, make that the active thought. Continue minimizing. I'm broadcasting today at a very low resolution. And so really, the mind map view benefits from a larger monitor. I've got a larger monitor over here to the right. When I want to look at the big picture of my information, my IT department, or like I said earlier, Los Angeles goes down. This is a great example. Let's just really quickly go to the Los Angeles thought, and I can start visualizing. I can hover over a thought. You can see every thought that I hover over when I'm in the mind map view. I'll either have a little minus sign that collapses that thought, or if it's already collapsed, I can expand thoughts. So I can really pick out a specific view that I want to visualize the big picture on. How is this project looking that we've been working on for the past week? What are all the different connections? Rather than meticulously going through and clicking thought by thought, from time to time, it's really beneficial to look at the big picture. And that's exactly what this mind map view can provide for you within the brain. So you can really understand your landscape and get a better picture of how it's all currently fitting together. So as we develop some other areas of other brains today, we'll come back and share this this specific view. And I'll be back in this brain a little bit later to share some other examples and features with you. But for now, I'm going to jump back over to my Creating the Ultimate Tech Brain and follow another link into my IT management brain. So my IT management brain, once again, this is going to be a brain that will be available to you to install. This particular brain is a little more robust. Whereas the last brain that I just had open, the network map, very specific. Servers, user communities, applications, databases, that's what I'm keeping track of in my network map brain. This particular brain, you can see if I click around just a bit quickly, has IT research resources. So if you're just getting started in the IT world and you're creating a brain to help you not only map out your environment, but keeping track of the latest trends, the latest technologies, resources that are available. IT research resources to get you a quick link over to Wired Magazine or CNET or Information Week, whatever the case may be. I've got my current IT assets, so an area where I can keep track of hardware assets, software. Here again is a network map. This network map, obviously, we don't know the name of everyone's databases. Some people name their databases DB01. Other companies may name their databases or their servers Bert, Ernie, and Oscar, whatever the case may be. So this is just an area where you can expand upon your environment and add it to this existing brain. And key user departments and clients. So once again, that user community that we're now breaking down into different actual departments. And specifically, I'm going to go into my active projects. Now, we gave you an example of, IT implementation A, B, C, whatever your projects may be. I'm going to pick one, and I'm actually going to start modifying this brain to become my own IT brain. And let's just say the project that we're going to be working on right now is basically overhauling our CRM system. And I really want to integrate VoIP technology with our ticketing system, with Jira and telnetting into all the different servers, et cetera. I want one absolute overhaul of how we are communicating with and tracking customers within the organization. So I'm going to rename this thought. I simply click on the thought name, and that opens up, when that's the active thought, it opens up the thought properties. And from here, I can go ahead and rename this thought to, we'll say, improved for our CRM system. And down below, I can start modifying all of this content. Now, really quickly, if you're just getting started with the brain, I want to share with you, you can also join a Brain 101 class where we take things very slowly, step by step. We're at a more accelerated pace here today. But very quickly, if you're creating new thoughts, I'm going to create thoughts in many different ways. You can click and drag off of the gate, create a new child thought. So let's say step 5 will be client review. So I can come back in and add new content into this sample brain at any time, or modify it bit by bit. And I want to rename technology planning. This just gives you an idea of the types of, in this case, I'm mapping out the different steps. So phase 1, technology, phase 2, requirements, et cetera. So let's just rename phase 1 to research. Just going to simplify that. And the first step in research is I'm going to start looking into the benefits of changing over to a VoIP system, voice operated IP. So benefits of VoIP, I'm also going to be looking into different VoIP vendors. And let's start with the benefits of VoIP. I believe I have a document that I want to bring into the brain. So let's start with that. I've got here there it is, benefits of VoIP. So I already have an existing document that I started putting together to review, maybe the cost savings, et cetera. And I simply want to bring that into the brain. Now, I've got it out in a folder on my local drive, but since I'm going to be navigating and managing this project from the brain, I want to bring that data into the brain. So it's a very simple process to get documents and content into the brain. Drag and drop is typically the easiest. So I'm going to grab this benefits of VoIP. Now I can drop it down below the active thought to create a new child thought. In this case, I want to drop it on top of the current active thought. And the default in the brain is to create a copy of the original document. So I now have, and I talked earlier about how copies are not my favorite, right? I talked about that in the knowledge crisis review. So I don't want a copy of this into the brain. I actually want this to reside permanently in the brain. So I can go back to the original, I can delete, but I also want to share with you, I'm going to delete this and reattach it. There's a couple of shortcuts that I can take. If I always want to be moving content into the brain, I can go into my options, and on the preferences tab, if you're on a Mac, you would click on the brain preferences, and then, on the UI tab, you would select the different options that you prefer for the brain to utilize when dragging and dropping into the brain. How do you want the brain to behave? Do you want the brain to move files into the brain, copy files, or link files into the brain? Personally, I prefer to move files into the brain. Quite often, I'm syncing my brain to the cloud. I've got online access to my brain. I've got access from my iPad, from my Android as well. So therefore, I want an internal attachment inside the brain that is synced to the cloud. So I'm going to change the setting to move file into the brain. I've deleted the original, and there's that, here's the original. I deleted the copy that I brought in. Now, when I drag and drop into the brain, you may notice that, poof, it disappears. It's been moved from its current location into the brain. So I like to move files into the brain. If you're on a network environment, you're the only one using the brain and really trying to pitch it to your company. Everyone should come on board with the brain. In the meantime, people are still just dumping all their existing files out onto the Z drive on your computer or on your network and calling it collaboration. So those files are being updated from other locations. So a shortcut may be your best option. The brain has many different options for you. And we'll talk about, I'll actually make a couple of shortcuts here in just a bit as well. So great, I've got this document into the brain for my research. In the research area, I also want to add some notes just to keep track of what I've reviewed so far, what I've seen, what I like, what I don't like, etc. Each thought in the brain has its own notes tab, and we'll really talk about the benefit of this in just a moment. But for now, under research, I quickly just want to add a checkbox. So I go up to my bullets area, I can add bullets, an ordered list, or specifically a checkbox. And you know, I really just want to review, let's say I want to make sure I replace the legacy systems. I want to incorporate, I should say, incorporate existing data sources. And so let's just bump this over. That's going to incorporate our Salesforce, Jira ticketing system, maybe even content on Z Drive, etc. So this is just a nice little checklist for me about what's going to work, what's not going to work. Once I find a way to move that over, I can keep further notes here and I can check that off the list. I know how to replace all of our old legacy systems. Salesforce, I've got a plan in place to actually start migrating that data, that content into my brain as well. Jira, no problem. Everything in Jira has its own URL, so I'll be bringing in just URLs to thoughts so I can easily access and have a direct link out to the Jira ticket, etc. So a nice, easy format for notes, very, very easy to use, clean layout throughout the brain, and each individual thought has its own notes tab, so you can always keep track of notes about a particular topic, not just a link to a file, but notes on why that file is important. And let's jump over to our thought for VoIP vendors. Now for this example, I'm just going to click on F4, and this opens the brain's search web feature. So I'm searching on Bing. You can modify to use your own search engine, whatever type of site you're typically searching on. But I'm going to search for some existing VoIP vendors, and right there at the top looks like a great link, the top 10 best VoIP vendors. Who can argue with that? This is some research I'll come back to later. So I'm just going to simply drag and drop from the address bar in the URL right into the brain. So the brain will actually rename that thought with the name that's appearing on the tab up above. So I've got a nice little link. I don't have time to research all of these 10 vendors. I'm going to be looking at them one by one. When there's one that I like, maybe Ring Central really works for me. There's some features in there that I'm really interested. This opens up Ring Central, and I'll drag and drop that into the brain as well. So, and maybe even put Ring Central down below the thought where I'm researching all the different top 10 vendors. And notice over on the right that the content actually loads up right there in the content window. So I can get directly to the website that I'm looking for without ever leaving the brain. Remember, we talked about earlier having one source for all of your information. Now I can just go into the brain. I've got links to files already. I've got links to all of my notes, thoughts, and ideas, as well as links to web pages. So a lot of great content already coming into this particular brain, but there's more to come. I've got a few more examples. The next thing I'm going to be doing is taking a closer look at the server where our CRM system actually is installed and resides. I want to overhaul this server. And the first step that I'm looking at is the server tends to go down quite a bit. I'm the only one that can fix it. Maybe I want to create this brain and share it with my team and leave instructions on how to go in and reboot the server. This is something that I specifically keep track of in my brain for my work. I am not the lead IT specialist at TheBrain Technologies, but I help out wherever I can. And in some scenarios, I don't know exactly how to get into the server, but if it's ever shared with me and I get the privilege of being able to restart a server, what have you, I share that information in the IT area of my brain. So here I've just got, I'll even rename this to restarting the server. So the first step in restarting the server, obviously I can keep some notes down below, but I actually have already received that information. That was emailed to me. I've got an app installed that I utilize. I've got a link to a network password that gets updated from time to time. So this is really a day in the life of an IT specialist. So here I've got my link. I've got a shortcut to my key. Now that key gets updated from time to time. So I'm not going to move this into my brain. I'm going to create a shortcut to that key. The app itself is an app called Putty. And here in my program files under Telnet, I've got a link to Putty. So this is absolutely necessary in order to reboot the server. How about those instructions? The instructions were actually emailed to me recently. And so let me open up there's my Putty instructions. So that I received in an email. So I've got an email with details. I've got the app itself, and I've got a link that I need to create for this particular key. So the brain is a great example. Rather than having all this information in disparate sources, let's bring it all into the brain. So my instructions, now because it's Google, I could actually drag and drop. Every Gmail has its own unique URL. You can drag that right into the brain. In this case, I just want to keep track of this information. So I'll just copy the text and paste this right into the notes. So restarting the server for the CRM system. Now I'll always be able to keep track of that. When prompted for the password, I need to know to type in SA, the actual script that I type in that reboots, in this case, it's Tomcat. I'll make that bold and even increase the size there. So that really stands out. I've got that information. And down below, I won't go through this step by step, but obviously if this fails, I need to contact Gary. So I'm going to create a link over to Gary. And Gary's thought is going to have his phone number. We'll just really quickly. So all of his contact information will be there, so I'll know exactly how to stay in touch with Gary. And I can even select this Gary. Whoops. I think it appears in a couple of spots here. I'll just grab this one. So I highlight the word Gary. There's a thought called Gary. So that means within the brain, I can actually create a link to that other thought with this button right here in my notes toolbar. I'll insert a link. So if I'm having trouble, I don't understand these instructions, Gary's a really nice, helpful guy. Obviously, I've got a nice little shortcut, a link to his thought, but I can also click right there in my brain to activate that thought to get to it quickly and give Gary a call. So I've got my instructions. That's fantastic. I also need this Putty exe. Now, this is an exe that I can move around. There's not a lot of files along with it. You know, I've got links in my brain so I can launch all my executables, shortcuts out to Photoshop, Word, Excel, what have you, right from my brain. In this case, I actually want to move the file in to the brain. So I'm just going to drag and drop. Oh, that'll move the file. I still want a copy of it there. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and click and drag Putty. And by holding down the Control key, I actually override the setting that I established earlier where files are being moved into the brain. I can hold down, I'm on a Windows machine, so I can hold down Control to copy a file into the brain. In this case, I'm fine with the copy. I can hold down the Alt key, and I'll do that for the PPK, Alt, and I've got a link back to that key. Now, the reason why I want a link there is because, and I'll keep some notes, this key, every 30 days, if the key is not working, contact. I know I've got a thought for Gary. I was going to type a new name, but let's just make Gary a really busy guy. If the key isn't working, contact Gary. And once again, I select, and I'm just going to link in my notes to an existing thought. Anytime you select some text in a note that is the name of another existing thought in that brain, you can very easily make a link to it. And that's because in some scenarios, I don't always want the link to be visualized. In this case, most likely, I've got a link to my key. It's going to be working. But if it doesn't for any reason, I can quickly, I know who to contact. And finally, let's go back to restarting the server. There's one more component in another directory. Actually, no, I've got that open in a web browser. I always want to make sure I've got the latest version of Putty installed. So I've got the web page where I can download Putty, more information about this. It's a Telnet client for SSH, or a Telnet app for SSH client, I should say. And I simply, once again, want to drag and drop this right into, maybe I'll drop that on the Putty thought. So that Putty thought has two different attachments. One actually launches the application. So there's Putty being launched. And the other actually loads up the website so I can see if I've got the latest version. And I'll even keep track in the notes, latest was downloaded on, and I'll insert today's current date and time. So a nice button there in the notes. I utilize that button quite often to keep track of when tasks took place, when I downloaded something, when I was assigned a project, an IT project, a server reboot or rebuild that I needed to take care of. So I timestamp that, and already in this area of my brain, I've got information coming in from email. I've got a key out on the network, a link to that path, to that location, so I can grab the new key so the actual application or utility that I also have in the brain can run, and specific instructions. Again, a day in the life of the IT specialist, hopping around from information source to information source, location to location, all easily accessible right here from one particular area in my brain. And all of this information just gathered, placed in my brain. I'll never lose track of it. I'll easily be able to get to this information in the future. And it took me just about 5 minutes to set that type of content up. So of course, that's another example of how you can start utilizing the different components of data that you're receiving, bringing it all into one trusted source for easy access to that data. Now, I've got two last features that I really want to share with you before we move on and I answer any questions that you may have in the question panel. And that is the subject of thought types and tags. You've seen that I've brought data into the brain, created notes, I've created web links, and links to other sources out on my network, and I'm visualizing all of their relationships in the brain. But I can also classify types of information. You may have noticed, and for this I'm going to jump back over to that network map, and I'll go into the standard normal view. Obviously, when I hover over a server, it's actually telling me that that is a server. If I hover over a location, it's telling me that that's a location. And these are what we call thought types. And a thought type is a classification of information in your brain. The other brain example, IT management, if I go back up, you can see I've got some thought types being utilized. So this is a project, whereas that's an IT asset. This is labeled as a goal. So I can very, very quickly find information by saying, all right, show me all of my IT assets. I can go up for my list. These are all the different thought types that are actually built into the brain already that you can utilize. And of course, you can add new thought types. You can right-click on a thought or just click on a thought to select from the dropdown or type in a new thought type or a new tag. But the benefit, once again, is to be able to find information quickly. If I want to review all of my IT assets, I can just click to expand the list and go right to my IT assets: hardware, databases, applications, servers, software, etc. So as you continue on grooming your brain and creating your brain, let's say the app 02 is an IT asset. I can click, and I'm going to change this label from the label of a server over to an IT asset. And it's really just up to you how you want to classify your information or categorize it, visualize it. And I'm going to jump back into the project, this research project that I'm working on. This is a current hot topic for me. So I already have that thought type existing. So I'm going to launch the properties for this thought and label this as a hot topic or a hot project that I'm working on. So I already had actually an icon associated with that thought, so it didn't inherit the thought. VoIP Vendors, this is also a hot project as well. I'll label this, and here you'll see the icon appear for that particular thought, because it doesn't have an icon at the thought level. It inherits the thought types icons. But the benefit to doing this, now I've just created two hot projects or hot projects that I'm currently focused on. So I can also go into reports and say, all right, in my reports, there's 92 thoughts in this brain. Just show me all of my thought types that are hot projects. So I scroll down to the project groups, and there are currently only two. I just created those two hot projects, but I can find all the different hot projects. Another hot project might be in a completely different area of my brain. Or you want to rename those that thought type from hot projects to important projects. I can open up and navigate to, if I click on the pencil, I can navigate to the actual hot project thought type and very easily rename this. Important projects. So whatever really works best for your environment. So I want to create a new thought type very quickly just to show you how that works. Again, under restarting the server, we've got Gary, who's helping us out immensely. Gary is actually going to be, maybe we're going to call him a knowledge expert. And I don't have this thought type yet. So I'm going to click to modify the thought type for Gary and enter a new type. Gary is a knowledge expert. And now I can click on the pencil to modify how knowledge expert thoughts will appear in the brain. I can change the color really quickly. So knowledge experts, maybe the text is going to be a light green, and the background is going to be whatever works for me, or here, light green, and then switch over to background, and sort of a dark gray for that background. And I'll click on the plus sign over to the left. This is where I can add an icon. I'll select a stock icon for a knowledge expert, and we'll just grab a guy with sunglasses there. So Gary is quickly identified. Now, anytime I see that little guy with the cool sunglasses, I'll know that is a knowledge expert, and I can find that I've got better understanding of who this person is. And again, I can filter out a report to find all knowledge experts in different areas of the brain that I'm working in. So that's one way of classifying information. And the next is to add a thought tag. A thought tag, the benefit there is that you can attach multiple thought tags to a single thought. So it's really attributes about the thought. So Gary is a knowledge expert, but Gary might speak French, or what is he a knowledge expert at? C# and HTML or something of that nature. So I can set those up as thought tags. For this example, I'm going to jump back into that network brain, and I'll just stay right here under Los Angeles. So I've got a grouping of servers that all exist in Los Angeles. Some of these are production servers. Others are backup servers or servers that are in transition. They're awaiting a rebuild or what have you. So I'm going to start creating some thought tags to assign these different attributes. So app 01, I'll click, and under tags, I'll create a new tag. So this is in production, or I'll just say production. No, I'll say in production. So, and maybe it has another tag. Maybe I give servers access levels. 1, 2, and 3. 1, you've got to have high-level security clearance. 2, pretty much anyone can log in. And 3, it's publicly accessible. So this is a access 1. That is a new tag as well. So as you can see, it's got 2 little tag icons, and when I mouse over, it tells me this is access level 1 and in production. And I can actually change and modify these icons as well. So I'm going to go up really quickly and open up access 1. And maybe for all access 1, I want a red light, green light, and yellow light. So I'm just going to go for something really basic. Maybe under user interface, I'll be able to find that. Access 1, I'll put a red X. So anytime I see this little red X, that means it's access security level 1. Whereas web apps, maybe this is the publicly accessible server. I'm going to set a new tag up, access level 3 is the new tag. And let's modify what level 3 tags look like. I'll grab an icon, and this is the little green plus. So already my tags are providing a bit of extra context. And I really love that you can assign those icons to your thought tags too. Apps 01, I see the red X, I know it's access level 1. Web app 1, little green plus sign, that means it's publicly accessible. And I can create another thought tag, once again, to identify a little yellow minus sign or something for limited access levels, whatever works for me, and apply multiple tags to a single thought. So tags are another really, really great example of how you can further provide additional context to the information that you're putting into your brain. And the final component, I see we're really coming up on the hour. Final component that I want to share with you today is just another brain example. Again, I'll be giving you a link to download this brain, but this is the engineering brain. So a little bit different than specifically IT management. Our engineering brain really takes you through a lot of resources, key resources. So key technologies. You can do research on relational databases, HTML5, XML, et cetera, C#. There's a lot of different types of information here. But also this is where you can come up with areas where you're mapping out your product issues and maybe even what the solution is. Issue number 1 has solution number 12, et cetera. So here's an issue, login time. Login doesn't time out. And then we can find reboot after of the app, and this is a solution that resolves this problem. So I'm going to change the thought type to solution. Let's see if I have that. I'll start typing. Yep, there it is, solution. So that is the solution. And I don't like the dark color on the dark background, so I'm going to modify what my solutions look like. Again, this is something that you can do if you install this particular brain. So all solutions, let's just simply give those a nice light yellow. That looks great. So reboot after reinstallation of the app resolves this problem, which is one of our product issues that we're tracking here in the engineering department brain. So a lot of other software applications, product development, infrastructure, and development tools. So this particular brain, like I said, there's still the network map, so there's still some IT-related information in this brain. But this brain in particular, a little bit more focused on just simply programming, engineering, and development. Again, another great example or brain that you can download to start building into your own topic-specific brain for your environment. And the final component that I wanted to share with you today, everything that I've done on these brains are local. Now, when you receive a link to this particular brain, you can download, these will come as either a BRZ or a .brainzip, a brain archive file. And if I click on File, I can select Import, and there's many different types of data that I can import into a brain. Properly formatted XML can be imported into a brain. Other mind mapping applications, Mind Manager and FreeMind files can be imported for then creating endless connections within your the mind map that you're building up. But of course, you can import an existing .brainzip or .brz. So you'll receive a link to where you can download these sample brains, the brains that I've been demoing today, and you can simply open up your brain and import into a new brain, select brain zip, click on select file, and here on my local PC, let's see, on my desktop, in TechBrain, there are the 3 different brains I'll be sharing to you. Just simply select a brain, click on open, and import that brain to create your own and get started. And then finally, you can also take this brain and share it to the cloud. The last component, one of the components that I talked about in the benefits to visualizing the relationships between your information, is also sharing that information with others and having access to it wherever you may go. So I'm going to take my IT management brain. I want a smaller brain just so it syncs up really quickly. I'm going to take this network map, the brain that I use sort of as a demo to get us started today, and I'm going to sync this to the Brain cloud. So that uploads to app.thebrain.com. And if we open up our website here at www.thebrain.com, I can click on login, and I'll log into my account where I've got access to all the different brains that I've synced to the cloud. Now, I may have more brain databases than the average person. I create a lot of different brains for different demos and share brains with other users. This one is called Creating the Ultimate Tech Brain. So let's see, it's done syncing. So let me just refresh one time. And there it is. So it just popped up. So now I can click and launch this brain in the web interface on the cloud. And if I decide I want to add new information at any time, I can actually add new information, add notes, add file attachments in the web interface. This brain is accessible anywhere I go. I can sync my network map to the cloud and then access my network map from home from my iPhone. So I'm actually going to launch now. Let me see if I can find my camera. There I am. So here is my cell phone, and I can click to launch the Brain app. You can download the Brain app from the App Store or the Android version from what's it called, the Play Store. And actually, I'm logged in as another user right now, a test user. But notice I can just simply launch the Brain and continue clicking and navigating through this Brain. Once again, buttons down below to add notes, content, so I can quickly type in a quick note or use my Brain to look up a password, look up those steps for rebooting a server and reboot the server remotely from my iPhone because I've got that information with me wherever I go. So that's one of the main benefits of syncing to the cloud, is having that phone access or online access. It's also really just a great backup, a great resource. I sync my brains to the cloud, and if I get a new machine or something happens to my existing machine, I reinstall the Brain, download my apps, or all of my brains, my brain databases, and once again, I've got access to that network map that I developed with passwords and information and all that accessibility from the Brain on my new machine. So I think that covers everything that I wanted to demo today. We're right on top of the hour, and I did see quite a few questions pop in. So really quickly, I'm just going to pop through the questions that we have here so far. And Lars asked the first question: how do you manage context in the Brain, i.e. the fact that a term might mean different things in different contexts? So that's really great. And what I'll do, Lars, from time to time is, it really depends on the environment or the scenario. But if a term means something different in 2 different environments, let's say we have our, do I have a customer's thought? I do have a customer's thought here. So I'm going to go to my customers. No, I don't have a customer thought. So I'll create one. So team, underneath team, I'm also keeping track of our clients. And let's say I just have a client, we'll say alpha and beta. So this is what I have in mind when you ask that question of it. It has different context. The same word has different context. So for example, if for each of these different clients, I'm keeping track of their servers. So if I were just to create a thought underneath alpha called server, and then go under beta and create a thought called server, that leaves me with two thoughts called server. And when I do a search, when I run a report, I find this repetitive word showing up again and again. And these are just two clients. I may have hundreds of clients in the future. So from time to time, for a really repetitive word or something that's like you said, means two separate things, these are servers for alpha versus servers for beta. I'll utilize the brain's comma trick. And the comma trick provides context-sensitive naming. So I say comma server list. I already have a thought called server. So this is alpha's server list versus beta's server list. So comma. Now you can add the comma at the beginning, you can add it at the end, whatever works best for you. But when it's in the context of the child thought, in this case, it's underneath beta, so it just displays as server list. But the full thought name, the brain actually appended the parent name onto the new child thought it was creating, beta server list. Whereas this is my alpha server list. If I mouse over, it's my alpha server list. So if I'm looking at all servers for Beta Corporation or Delta Corporation or whoever it may be, if I do a search for server, I've got server report, server location, but here's my server list specifically for beta and for alpha, rather than having two thoughts just named server list. So that comma trick allows you to add greater context and find the data that you're looking for. I hope that specifically addresses the question, Lars, that you had. But also, if you're just learning about that comma trick, sorry, I've got another pop-up window. There we go. If you're just learning about that comma trick and you've got existing thoughts, so let's say, once again, we have another client, Delta. And you've already created your thought for your server list. So that's just showing up as server list, and you want to add that comma trick, you want to add that feature, you just simply manually need to add it in. And here I'll just do it at the end to show you it works on both ends. Server list, and this is for the client Delta. So underneath Delta, it just shows up as server list, but it shows up in context. When I do a report or I'm reviewing, you can really see the benefit there in the past thought list. Delta list for server, or the server list for Delta, server list for alpha, server list for beta, etc. And the next question that popped up came in from John. Hey, Matt, how do you get the notes icons to wrap? I lose view of most of them unless I expand my full notes window to nearly the full window. So the notes icons in the notes will never wrap, but they should resize for you. So for example, if I go back into my brain I started out with, here it is. Sorry, let me just move a few things around the screen. Here is my map for London Underground, but notice if I scroll this down just a bit, the note gets smaller and smaller, or the image gets smaller and smaller. So the image should always be fitting. In version 9 of the brain, it scales very nicely. And yes, of course, you can just expand to minimize the brain for a moment and just focus there on the notes, or vice versa. I can minimize the notes. And also, if you've got really seem to have very long notes, you can flip-flop sort of the view of the brain. So I've got just the plex up above and the note appearing down below. So a lot of different viewing options to see what works best for you. But I do the same thing. I'll just minimize, and I think I even did that today in the demo, just minimize the plex. So I go full screen with the note very, very quickly. Focus on that. When I need my navigation back, I just click on the arrow again and bring the plex right back in. So there is no wrap option for the icons, unless notes icons to wrap. I lose most of them unless I expand my notes window. I see what you're saying. You might actually be talking about the tool menu up above. So Yes, you're going to lose some notes if you or excuse me, you lose some access to buttons. They'll become drop-down menus if you have a particular setting turned on. So I'm going to go back to the default view, and notice I've got my buttons, icons right at the top. And actually, John, I think this is what you're referring to. So there in the notes, I always have access to all of these buttons, and that is because in Options, Preferences, there is an option for, and I usually leave this turned off, there it is, use compact toolbars for notes. So if you've got that button checked, they just compacted, and now you've got all these little drop-down lists. And the more you compact your notes, the more they'll squeeze in. All the features will be there, but they'll only be in these drop-down lists like you see back behind me. If you want all the buttons there all the time, just simply uncheck that option, and then they wrap around. Got it, John. I think that's what you meant. It was the icon specifically for the tools. And let's just grab a few more questions. I'm so sorry, I won't be able to get to all of these questions. We are over the hour, but since you're still with me, let's go right ahead. And it looks like, let me scroll back up. So Morcom had the next question. Is there any impact on the performance of the brain as more and more files, perhaps large ones, are stored within the brain as opposed to just having links to the files? No, there should be no impact. I mean, the only impact I can think of is if you are taking your brain with you, zipping it up and taking your brain with you to a convention or something. So you've got your brain zipped up. You can zip up a brain, archive it, compact it by clicking on, in the Brain application, File, Backup to Brain Archive. So when you back up your brain to a brain archive, you're taking your entire brain database and compacting it into a single file that can be put on a thumb drive and then extracted onto another machine at a later date or just stored or what have you. So if you've got gigs and gigs and gigs of data, then they all go into that single file, and it might be hard to move around that brain archive file. The sync will take a lot longer. If you're syncing to the cloud, larger files are going to take longer to sync to the cloud. So you may experience some long sync times if you're updating these very large files and keeping track of your brain on the brain cloud. Performance-wise, everything should work fine. In fact, I can't open it now. I just received a brain file recently from a client that was upgrading from version 3 to version 9. So we did the migration for them. There's a very few very unique and interesting things about their brain, and it's working fine. It's a 20 gig brain because of all of that content. It's a huge, huge brain database, but it works just fine. And that actually transitions very nicely into a sample brain that you can view online. Here's a link to Jerry's Brain. Now, you can go to www.jerrysbrain.com. Jerry is very quickly closing in on having 1 million thoughts, all created one at a time, thought by thought. He didn't do any import. He created this brain, started in the 90s, and it's still the same brain database, available online at www.jerrysbrain.com. And I can, new and improved areas. So these are areas he's working on. I like DIY, so do it yourself. Crowdsourcing, do it yourself. Atomic weapons, oh my goodness, do it yourself. Book tours, bike tours, that's interesting. So French bike tour, and that takes us over to bicycle touring, another area under types of tourism. This is an amazing brain. And notice I just clicked through 10, 15 thoughts very, very quickly. It's still very responsive. It's available online. And it's a great example of how scalable the brain application really, really is. And JR had the question, I had to travel to my office. I missed the first part of the webinar. Is there a recording? Yes, absolutely. We're recording today's webinar, and that will be available on our website. We'll send you a link and a thank you email tomorrow, along with links where you can download the different brains that I demoed today as well. And here's another question requesting that I also share the Create the Ultimate Tech Brain. So yes, I'm happy to zip that up and share this brain that was sort of our guide through the or syllabus of what we were going to be covering today. But I'm more than happy to share this sample brain with you as well. And Computer Help, thanks for joining us today. Computer Help asked, in your examples as shown, how do you build the thought types list to appear categorized, nested, or indented? So that's an excellent, excellent question. And what I always do, what I always let people know is, once you create two thought types, if you attach one to the other as a child thought, you'll nest those thought types. So let me jump back over to IT management. And in my IT management brain, this is what Computer Help is referring to. Notice how things are nested. So under person, I have consultants, leaders, professional. Indented again under professional, directors, executive, experts, manager, etc., and visionaries. So those are nested thought types. And the reason is I can say, do a report. So show me all thought types that are person thought types, and anything below thought type there will show up as well in the report. Now, once again, these are sample thought types and tags. They haven't been assigned to a lot of thoughts within the brain, but you'll see all of your people thought types will show up there. Or you can specifically say, all right, I'm not looking for specifically my person thought types, and I can even add what I want to select or not. Let's uncheck that and say, all right, just show me all of my directors. And there's only one, a thought called IT director, is a director thought type. So nesting thought types is definitely an option. And again, to do that, I just link one as a child. So if I want my knowledge expert to be a subcategory of people or person thought type, notice in my thought type list, there's knowledge expert. It's just a standalone thought type. I want to categorize it as a sub thought type of person. So I'm going to link knowledge expert, the thought type, underneath person. And so now it's a subcategory. If I go back to my list, I've subcategorized knowledge expert as a subcategory of the person thought type. So when I'm doing filtering a report, show me all my persons or person thought types, knowledge experts will appear in that list as well. And oops, there we go, back to the question panel. So just time for a few more questions. Oh, and Jan had the same question. How do you create subtypes? So glad that I was able to address that question as well. Glenn asked make a phone call Tuesday. Are those tags or types? Glenn, excellent question. So there's one more question after you from Lars, and then we'll wrap it up. But Glenn, wonderful, wonderful question. A topic that we didn't even get a chance to communicate or share today. I'm going to go back to my Gary thought type. So let's say I've got a call with Gary on Monday morning to review restarting the server. I want him to make sure my instructions are correct. So we're going to set up a call for Monday morning. Now, yes, I could create a to-do thought tag and just tag this to-do. And on Monday, I'll check my brain and here's all my to-do tasks. Oh, call Gary today. That's one of them. But the brain can also set up reminders. So wonderful, wonderful feature in the brain application. So if I open up, there's a little button here right next to my reports, which opens up your brain timeline. So we didn't really even get a chance to talk about timeline today. Timeline is where you can set up events. So you can keep track of when a meeting is happening or when a project is being worked on, et cetera. I can just restarting the server. Let's say we're going to be reviewing that tomorrow from 8 a.m. till 4. So I click and drag in the timeline, and I call this the project review. And that adds a new event, excuse me, that can also be associated with the current active thought. When you create an event in the timeline, it's a standalone event, but I can specify with whatever thought is active, attach this to restarting the server. So now on restarting the server, I can see there's not only notes, there's also events with each individual thought. So when meetings took place or are taking place, et cetera, excuse me. And also you may have noticed there's a checkbox for a reminder. So I'm going to open up to modify that event again. And yes, I want the brain to send me a reminder 10 minutes prior to the event. The reminders look like this. I'll go ahead and say Gary, whoops, there's my Gary thought, and I'll add a new event from the tab on the right, which automatically associates it with the current active thought. Call Gary. I can enter a description, a location, etc. But let's say this event was supposed to happen on June 1st. So that was just a 1-hour event. And in my brain, did I click on a reminder? I don't think I did. So I'm going to open up this event one more time. Oops, there we go. And yes, have the brain give me a reminder. And there it just popped up. So I'm 1 week past due on this particular event, but that's what your brain reminders will look like. So you can set up reminders, they'll pop up in your brain, and you can specify if you want it to pop up 10 days before the event or 10 minutes before the event, what have you. So you can modify when those reminders pop up. And as one last component, if you are using the Brain Pro combo and syncing to the Brain Cloud, you can also synchronize your calendar with your Google Calendar. So there's a button here to open up your Google Calendar settings. I haven't synced this Brain yet, so it can't be set up. But as soon as you start syncing to the cloud, you can synchronize your Brain with your Google Calendar as well. So therefore, from Google Calendar, set up email reminders for events that originate from the Brain. And then the final question that came in from Lars, which is, seems like your brain is very personal. What if you need to work together with another person? How can this person understand all your specific icons, terms, etc.? So yes, if you're going to be collaborating in a brain, it's really up to you to decide how you want to define thought types, thought tags, etc. I do have brains that I share with other users. Once you sync a brain to the cloud, let me navigate back into this brain that I synced. Now that I've synced this brain to the cloud, I can go into online and select brain access and sharing. So I can make this brain publicly accessible and tweet out this URL. Anyone with that URL can visit this brain online and navigate in read-only mode. You can actually upgrade your brain to the brain, to what we call Team Brain. Team Brain allows me to add additional users. So I'm going to add Shelly. I'll just go from the drop-down list. So there's Shelly has been added. That allows me to just type in anyone's email address to send them an email. But Shelly is actually on Team Brain along with me at TheBrain Technologies. So I can assign her as a writer to this brain. I'll say save. And next time I sync this brain, an email will be sent to Shelly saying she's got editor access, writer access to this brain. And now we're collaborating. As far as Shelly understanding my terms, my terminology, my thought types, my tags, etc., it's collaborative. We can have feedback. We actually create, in brains that we share, we create thoughts where we're collaborating. How do we want to identify something as being phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, et cetera, in a business cycle or in a project cycle? What defines transference of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? So it's a team brain. We're collaborating, we're sharing ideas, and we discuss those specific items, how we're going to utilize the different phases within the brain and when something passes from phase 1 and 2, et cetera. It's collaborative. We share, we discuss it right there in the brain. In fact, we'll create a note or a thought to go back. Remember, I created that thought earlier online called new info that's showing up here in my desktop version as well. And here is my first idea. And I'll just place a little line there, and Shelly can put something down below or push my idea down and add something up above. Info. And so, we start using different areas of the brain, notes specifically in the brain, as just communication. Less meeting time, everything is right there in the brain, so I can find out when changes took place. Did Shelly add any new content? I don't think so. I just shared this brain with her, but I can review the recent changes and find out who created new thoughts, who made edits, modifications, and when. And even go into the individual thoughts to find out which notes, when Shelly added new notes, when I added new notes, et cetera. So collaborative, we work it all out right there in the brain. You're absolutely right. I'm creating thought types tags that make sense to me, the red icon, the blue icon, etc. In a collaborative environment, we simply need to agree on what those processes would be, and maybe even create a thought where we have a key. What does the red icon mean? What does the blue icon mean? So that we all have a great understanding of the data that's going into our shared collaborative brain. So thank you so much for all those great questions and taking us in a few new directions and demoing a few new features of the brain that I didn't plan on demoing today, but definitely are relevant to today's topic of creating the ultimate tech brain. Thank you so much for joining me. If you do have further questions, please feel free to write them into support@thebrain.com. We're happy to address and answer any additional questions you may have. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me. Have a great rest of the week and enjoy your brain. Bye.